WWEGraham GSM Matthews at WrestleRant featured columnist December 30, 2018. WWE fans demand a bout between Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania 34. Credit, WWE.comIt. SA, new era in WWE, at least according to the company itself. Mr. McMahon introduced the new regime on a recent Raw and completely did away with the middle management, i.e. general managers, which is different from how Raw and SmackDown Live have traditionally been run in years past. Regardless of who's in charge, it's tough to argue with how dull the overall product has been in 2018 and how a drastic creative overhaul of some sort is desperately needed. Already WWE has shown that they are willing to give fans what they want, with the revival receiving more television time, Mustafa Ali being added to the SmackDown roster, and the announcement of women's tag team titles being introduced soon. Of course, it will take much more than that for them to earn the audience's trust back following years of questionable decisions. It remains to be seen whether WWE will actually make an effort to turn things around, or if their claims of change will prove to be nothing more than empty promises. Either way, fans have been very vocal lately about what they would like to see implemented into the weekly shows sooner rather than later. Not all of the problems that have plagued the product this year can be rectified overnight, but the company can at least address the issues before taking the appropriate steps to solve them. From brand switches to pushes for certain stars to a WrestleMania main event that must be booked, this is the ultimate end-of-the-year wish list for WWE fans in 2019. Credit, WWE.com's over-reliance on evil authority figures over the past 2 decades has been as big of a problem for the company as anything else. Mr. McMahon set the bar high with his heel work during the Attitude Era, and with the exception of an elite few, i.e. Eric Bischoff and Vickie Guerrero, no one has come close to topping him. That was especially true in 2018 with Baron Corbin running Raw for the second half of the year. Thankfully, he was recently removed from his position of power, but that doesn't make up for the many months that his heel shenanigans, which included impromptu handicap matches and babyfaces being held down, ruined Raw. Mr. McMahon, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon and Shane McMahon announced on the deck 17 edition of Raw that they would be in charge of both Raw and SmackDown Live moving forward, effectively eliminating the general manager role. There were never any need for GMs in the first place, but the McMahons shouldn't be overexposed on WWE TV, either. The authority has already been done to death, so rerunning that same storyline will get old fairly quickly if WWE decides to go that route. Instead, the powers that be should have a much smaller presence on programming and should be heard from much less often than they're seen. NXT is a prime example of how authority figures should be handled, with their brand's general manager William Regal rarely ever appearing on the show. Whenever he does surface, however, it's for a major happening. WWE would benefit from taking a similar approach as we enter 2019 and shifting the focus from the authority figures to the talent. Credit, WWE.com's women's evolution can be traced back as far as 2015 when the hashtag. It wasn't long after that NXT standouts Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch were introduced to the main roster audience. Since then, the ladies of Raw and SmackDown Live have been receiving more and more opportunities and have made history on countless occasions. Well, what about the tag teams? It can be argued that WWE hasn't had a consistently strong tag team division in over 3 decades. Whenever a team starts to catch fire, they are almost immediately broken up, and the few who have remained together, such as the Usos and the New Day, have stood the test of time due to their ability to constantly reinvent themselves. Beyond those 2 tandems, though, the well runs dry in terms of elite tandems on Raw and SmackDown. The Revival have yet to be given a fair shake, Sanity is rarely ever seen on SmackDown, AOP aren't nearly as dominant as they should be, and Bobby Roode and Chad Gable are only temporary. The Raw Tag Team Championship changed hands a whopping 8 times in 2018, and no tandems held the twin titles for more than 2 months. The division has been a complete afterthought on both brands for several years, so one of WWE's top priorities in 2019 should be to showcase tag team wrestling more often. They have proven that when given the chance to shine, they more than make the most of it. Credit WWE.com. A common criticism of the WWE product for years has been how the NXT call-ups have been handled. Aside from a select few such as Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens and Charlotte Flair, WWE doesn't have the greatest track record of taking talent from the black and yellow brand and using them appropriately on Raw and SmackDown Live. From Apollo Crews to Bayley to The Revival, there are several stars who have failed to sustain momentum as a result of bad booking. This year wasn't much different, as Sanity, The Iconics, Ember Moon and even Andrade Cien Almas all floundered on their respective shows. Above all else, WWE must pay more attention to these aspiring superstars from NXT and ensure they're being brought up with a plan in place. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to be just another body on the roster and lose any luster they had down in developmental. WWE announced on the December 17th edition of Raw that EC3, Lars Sullivan and Nikki Cross, among others, will be arriving on Raw and SmackDown in the coming weeks. All of those names had solid stints in NXT and deserve to be given a chance to get over in front of a bigger audience. Aleister Black is another individual who shouldn't be overlooked upon debuting on the grand stage sometime in 2019. He has far too much potential to be wasted, though it would take a ton for WWE to squander a star of his caliber. Then again, WWE managed to mangle Finn Balor and Shinsuke Nakamura, so anything is possible. Credit WWE.com. It has been nearly 4 years since the King of the Ring tournament was last held under the WWE banner. What gives? The semi-finals and finals of 2015 tournament aired exclusively on the WWE Network, and although it was cool to see Wade Barrett emerge as the new King of the Ring, he was booked horribly shortly thereafter. Thus, it's possible the powers that be considered their experiment to revive the tourney a failure, but that was entirely their fault. A King of the Ring tournament, if done right, can be beneficial for whoever wins it as well as entertaining for those tuning in to see it. After all, wrestling fans love tournaments, and there's no reason for the 8-person bracket to be squeezed into one episode of Raw. In fact, bringing it back as an annual pay-per-view would be the best option. There are so many events on the WWE calendar that either aren't interesting or don't serve a purpose, or both, so replacing a show such as Hell in a Cell or Extreme Rules with King of the Ring would surely be a well-received decision. Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H all had the honor to call themselves the King of the Ring at one point in their respective careers, and look how they fared. King of the Ring returning is worth a shot, as long as the campy crown and scepter are left behind. Credit WWE.com. Roman Reigns revealing to the WWE Universe on October 22 that he had leukemia and that he would have to take time off indefinitely left a major void on Raw. It's no secret that WWE has been grooming Reigns to be the guy for several years by having him beat the legendary likes of Triple H, The Undertaker, John Cena and Brock Lesnar, among others. Despite their best efforts to endear him to the audience, nothing has worked, and in the meantime, the company has neglected the rest of the roster. That became more apparent once Reigns announced his departure from the flagship show a few months ago, and WWE has struggled to find a fitting replacement for him ever since. Between Braun Strowman and AJ Styles, there are a handful of fan favorites WWE could realistically build around if they so wished, but Seth Rollins is unquestionably the best candidate to take over as the face of the franchise. His hot streak in 2018 cannot be denied, and at only 32 years old, he still has the rest of his career ahead of him. As abysmal as Raw was this year, it would have been significantly worse if Rollins wasn't around, making it all the more mind-boggling that he hasn't sniffed the Universal Championship picture in over 2 years. That needs to change in 2019. In fact, WWE might as well go ahead and rename the red brand to Monday Night Rollins next year, seeing as how he's the sole superstar worth watching for on the show nowadays. Credit WWE.com. Regardless of whether it's Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman or whoever, someone desperately needs to relieve Brock Lesnar of the Universal Championship in the not-so-distant future. Him holding the gold for over 500 days between April 2017 and August 2018 was ridiculous enough, let alone the decision to put the belt back on him at Crown Jewel 2 months ago. Lesnar has been persona non grata on Raw since then, and his extended absence from the red brand has left the Raw roster with nothing to fight for. Strowman will challenge for the championship at the Royal Rumble, but it is hardly a guarantee he will beat the Beast incarnate for the strap considering how many times he has fallen short of doing so before. It's possible WWE will hold off on Lesnar dropping the title until WrestleMania 35, but either way, his WWE tenure must be coming to an end in the next few months. Of course, fans have been speculating about Lesnar leaving WWE for UFC for years, but he has done more to harm than help the product lately and he simply isn't worth the company's investment. It wouldn't be enough for WWE to transition him out of the main event picture, he should go away entirely in order to feel fresh again. Yes, he rarely ever appears on WWE TV as it is, but a majority of the WWE universe is still sick of seeing him at this point, and he would benefit from disappearing for a while. There's plenty of money to be made for Lesnar in UFC, so once WrestleMania season has come and gone, here's hoping he returns to mixed martial arts full-time while WWE finally moves on from the narrative that Lesnar is the almighty being that can't be conquered. Credit WWE.com. Finn Balor made quite the impact upon arriving on Raw in the summer of 2016 by beating Roman Reigns on his first night as a member of the roster and becoming the inaugural Universal Champion at SummerSlam. Unfortunately, a serious shoulder injury hindered his hot momentum and he hasn't been the same since. The former NXT champion has attempted to recapture that same magic he had a few years ago by chasing the Intercontinental Championship, forming the Balor Club and bringing back his demon persona on a handful of occasions, but he has so far failed to escape mid-card mediocrity. It's clear officials have no plans for him to be a main event player on Raw. Otherwise, he would have received a more aggressive push by now, so his best bet would be to move to SmackDown Live in 2019, preferably as part of the annual Superstar shakeup soon after WrestleMania 35. AJ Styles likely wouldn't be the same superstar he is today if he wasn't positioned so strongly on SmackDown and instead played second fiddle to Roman Reigns on Raw. Balor could experience similar success if he switches shows next year and gets that big break at long last. Not only would the change of scenery be good for him, Balor would have a fresh batch of opponents to work with. He could also reunite, or possibly feud, with Styles, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. The possibilities are endless, and it's hard to imagine he would any worse off on SmackDown he currently is on Raw. Credit WWE.com. Ronda Rousey vs. Becky Lynch was the match WWE fans didn't know they wanted until it was announced for Survivor Series 2018, one day removed from the Epic Evolution event. At the time, Rousey was on a roll as the Raw Women's Champion, while Lynch was catching fire over on SmackDown Live as the hottest heel in all of wrestling. The build-up to the bout was brilliant, with Rousey and Lynch trading Twitter jabs online and cutting promos on each other on SmackDown and Raw, respectively. It was easily the most anticipated outing on the entire card, and there was genuine uncertainty regarding who would win this Clash of Champions. Before the matchup could come to pass, Lynch suffered a legitimate broken face at the hands of Nia Jax, causing the contest to be called off. Despite that, the man continued to call out Rousey on Twitter, leading to Rousey costing her the SmackDown Women's Championship at the TLC pay-per-view earlier this year. Needless to say, the bad blood brewing between the two is far from over and is bound to culminate at some point. WWE would be foolish to have them come face-to-face any sooner than WrestleMania 35, but not only should they do battle on the grandest stage of them all, they should fight in the main event of the evening. As it currently stands, no match makes more sense to headline the show of shows next April than Rousey vs. Lynch. It would be history-making, but more importantly, it would be deserving of the honor considering how fans having been waiting with bated breath to see it happen. Of course, anything can change between now and WrestleMania, but if these two aren't closing out the event, WWE should seriously reevaluate how they do business. Graham aka Graham GSM Matthews, is an Endicott College alumnus and aspiring journalist. Visit his website, Next Era Wrestling, and like his official Facebook page to continue the conversation on all things wrestling.